Okay. So now we will go to Catalonia for some more positive info.
Well, I'm not pretty sure whether it's positive or not, but first of all, I would like to thank ESFL for inviting me, for having me here. It's a great pleasure for me to speak in front of you. And I was asked to say some thoughts, to share some thoughts on the case of Spain and on the Catalonia's case in particular. So first of all, I will give some general brief remarks on the Spain's and Catalonia's case, and then I will try to answer this very serious question, whether or not regionalism or secessionism is something that libertarians or pro-liberty-minded people should be in favor of and embrace. So first of all, Spain as a country, as a state, is divided or split into 17 autonomous communities, which are Catalonia, Basque Country, and Galicia as well. Those are, let's say, those three major cases, those three so-called historical communities that are, let's say, mostly advanced on this path in autonomy or having those pro-secessionist sentiments. So basically, Spain is not a federal state, but it's not a typical unitary state like Poland, for instance. So it is being characterized as a state of regions or regional state. So one can say that it is something between federal and unitary state, but it's still unitary state nevertheless, because the final word, even on the autonomy status, on the autonomy statutes, this final word is in the central government in Madrid hands. So the other, let's say, major feature of the Spain's case is the fact or the existence of the so-called patrias chicas, which are, let's say, the very small countries, local communities, and the existence of the local and national identities, various ones, and they are, let's say, mostly observed in Basque Country and in Catalonia's cases, because in those regions one can see the existence of different cultures, languages, traditions. The religious factor is also important. They have their very own unique, distinctive history, and they have something that you can call a specific self-identity, because it's not like that the most of the citizens of Spain consider themselves as Spaniards, or that the citizens of Catalonia consider themselves as Spaniards, because in most of the cases, as the studies show, they are like twofold. They have twofold identities. So the primary identity for most of them is, in the case of Catalonia, that they are mostly or mainly Catalans, and being Spaniards, then. So they are not consider themselves as purely Spaniards, but rather Catalans and then Spaniards. And of course, in Madrid or in Andalusia, the situation is different. So they consider themselves mostly Spaniards, and let's say Castilians as a, let's say, second identity. So in this case, Catalonia or the Basque Country are quite different than the other parts of the peninsula, because as I said, they have this very strong national identities. And if you go to Spain or to Catalonia or to Basque Country, you can easily see those differences, because, let's say, for example, all the signs on the streets, the names of the streets are not in Spanish Castellano, but they are in Catalan. So for many of you, the difference may not be, let's say, that big, but for them, I assure you, this difference is something they would even go and die for, because as I said, Catalonia has its own for the Catalan nationalists very glorious history of having a separate own kingdom which existed and expanded almost across the whole Mediterranean Sea, and they are very proud of their history, and they are longing for the state they had in the past, and they want to recreate it. And this is one of the main reasons why are they struggling for independence. But from our, let's say, libertarian point of view, the main problem, let's say, with Catalonia or in Basque Country, maybe not as much, because the Basques are traditionally more, let's say, Catholic, more conservative. So maybe they are not that, let's say, progressive or leftists or liberal in the American sense of the word, like Catalans. But the major, let's say, political factor or the major wing in the Catalonia's policy consists of the left wing or statist parties. So they are pursuing independence, but mainly to achieve more welfare state than they have already as a part of Spain, because they think that seceding from Spain will benefit their own welfare state, their own social security, because in their own view, in their own minds, what the central government in Madrid is doing, basically they are not doing enough in their point of view. So in order to strengthen the welfare state, they need to secede. Well, the advantage of let's say their pursuit is, in comparison to the Basque Country, that they don't use violence. They do not lean to terrorism, as it was in the case of ETA, Euskadi Askatasuna in Basque language. So for the centuries, for the decades, they are doing something that is traditionally in Catalonia called pactisme. This is a way of negotiating with the central government in order to obtain more and more, let's say, benefits or gain more strength to the local government in Barcelona. But as I said, the dominant parties, the major parties in Catalonia are the statist and left-wing parties like this Podemos or Esquerra Republicana de Catalunya or CUP, which are communists, and Barcelona even has a mayor that is Ada Colau, and she's a representative of a communist group. So as you can see, it's from a libertarian perspective, not it doesn't sound or it doesn't look very well. So the question arises here whether or not the Spain will or in which direction will Spain go? Whether the status quo will still pursue, or maybe will the central government in Madrid give more and more autonomy to the regions like Catalonia, so that it will inhibit those pro-secessionist movements, or maybe the state will go to more federal model, as in the case of Germany, for instance, or maybe, which is I think the least probable scenario, the central government will let the communities like Catalonia or Basque Country to secede, and all of those changing situation scenarios involve amending the Spanish constitution, because in the Spanish constitution, as in most constitutions of the European states, secession is prohibited. Only, as far as I know, only the constitution of Liechtenstein allows parts of the states to secede. So maybe Spanish officials, Spanish government would like to implement the part of the Liechtenstein's constitution, so that the secession will be legally permitted. But as I said, I don't see this scenario too probable to fulfill. And the other question is whether those who want to secede or those who want greater autonomy will be less statist, so that they will change their agenda more into a laissez-faire economics or advancing more freedom. And in particular, in the Catalonia's case, the Catalan government that has been elected in September last year, they are actually pursuing one of those scenarios, namely this pro-secession scenario, and they want to secede, they want to unilaterally declare Catalonia's independence in June 2017. And they are quite, let's say, advanced on this path. They are building this, let's say, new state institutions, like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for instance. And what they want to do is to host a formally legally binding referendum, where they will ask the Catalan citizens, do they want the Catalan Republic, do they want to secede or not? And of course, as I said, Spain is a unitary state, so the final decision will be in the hands of Madrid. So Madrid can either accept this fact and let Catalans go or not. And then the situation, of course, will be more puzzled than it is already. But as I said, the main question that arises here is, should I or you, as a libertarians or pro-liberty minded people, should we embrace such a movement, such a leftist statist movement towards secession, or why should we be for it? And I think that one can list at least half a dozen of arguments why we should, nevertheless, knowing those facts, still be before the secession. The first is that on the grounds of natural law and on the principle of liberty, you know, every single human being is not somebody's slave. That he's responsible for his own actions, and as soon as he doesn't violate other people's property or other people's rights, he's free to choose. He's free to exercise his liberties and his freedoms, like a freedom to choose the government under which he wants to live. So first of all, on this very basic ground of pursuing liberty, even those who need this liberty, this secession, in order to establish more welfare state, well, it's still their own choice. It's still their own decisions and not mine. So as I said, I'm not their master, and I can of course persuade them to be more laissez-faire, not statist, but it's their lives. So if they voluntarily want to establish more statist welfare state, as I said, as long as they do it non-coercively, they are free to do so. The second one is that even if such a leftist, left-wing group secedes, we almost all the time are focused on those people. That if you are for secession of such a region, you are promoting statism. But look on the other side. If those people who are statists secede from a given territory, then this territory that is left can be less statist, because there will be less people who are voting for more welfare state than it was before. So there is a greater chance that those who remained can build more laissez-faire state. More laissez-faire state. And the second thing is that in this, let's say, smaller community that has already seceded, if you are a Democrat, if you stand for democracy, the single vote matters and weighs more. Because in a group of 15 million people, your vote is not as, let's say, valuable as in the group of 5 million people. So maybe in this smaller group, such a political parties like Partido Libertario de España, for instance, can gain more votes or can be, let's say, more valuable partner for the other political parties. So without, let's say, support of this party, they cannot pursue anything in the local parliament. And what else? The possibility of sparking a internal conflict or even a civil war diminishes, because those two or three or more states that emerge after the secession are more homogeneous, and the people actually are living where they want to live. So the Catalans are no longer forced to live with Spaniards who they dislike, and the other way around. So the possibility that their lives will be more peaceful again arises. And of course, it can sound pretty harsh, but from my point of view, if, let's say, Catalonia is, as a new state, is being more and more statist or even more and more socialist or communist, hey, we will have another example that socialism doesn't work. So for us, it can prove that we are right and they are wrong. As I said, it can sound pretty bad, but as I said before, it is their own lives. And to conclude, I would like to quote F.A. Hayek, who said that freedom granted only when it is known beforehand that its effects will be beneficial is not freedom. So I believe in this statement, and I believe that being for any given movement only when I know that it will bring more and more freedom, it's not, let's say, coherent with purely libertarian standpoint. So this is where I will end, and I'm open to any of your questions regarding Spain or Catalonia.
I have one question about proportions. Do you know how it stands today? What is the ratio pro and contra of independent movement?
Well, the recent data and the recent research shows that there is, let's say, stable but growing amount of people who would like to vote in a referendum on the independence of Catalonia in favor. So more, yes, still more, because 10 or 5 years ago, supporters of the independence of Catalonia, there were around 40% of the population of Catalonia, and nowadays it is still growing, maybe not dramatically, but it's growing, and for a few months you can see that there is a more than 50% of those who are being asked what would they do, and they respond that they will eventually vote for independent Catalonia. But as I said, this is only a research, and the only, let's say, valuable test will be the actual formally binding referendum, and until it's done, we can just only speculate.
I asked about the percentage because we have lately had 2 examples of how polls are working, right? I mean, Trump and Brexit. So if you say that this is like 55% pro independencia, it means that during the voting day it can be about 78%, something like that. You know, the polls are like lessons, right? I asked about the percentage because in your case, in 1992, there was a referendum to separate from Serbia. It was like 95% contra against this thing. Now in 2006, you had 55.5% in favor of separating from Serbia, and 55% is like a threshold of European Union. So 55.5 is like just above the net. What happened between 92 and 2006? Because it's like a huge half of the nation, you know, just change its opinion. What happened between those referendums?
It's a great question because the there are the same actors. For example, the people who led no in 1992 are those who lead yes in 2006. So in general, those are the same people, just switch their opinions. But I think the main reason of having these results in 2006 is that Montenegro was in one way tired of Serbia, and there was a concept of Montenegro as independent state, and they wanted to develop it. People saw opportunity, they voted for it, and I think also one of the reasons was that Montenegro was always somehow Western oriented, while Serbia was mostly Eastern oriented country. So in those questions were big differences, and this is something that I can say was that main issue that prevailed.